Hey, and welcome to the Menschwarmers. I'm Gabe, and that's Jamie. We're here to talk about Jews and sports. We got a real banger of an episode today.
Hey, is here, and thanks for subscribing to our podcast. We've been getting some great feedback from our fans, both at home in Canada and in the United States, and across the pond in England. Some people had some feedback on our Ajax and Tottenham takes. We'll have some more updates about that after the second game in that series is played. For now, we are very, very happy to have an interview with Jonathan Mayo, writer for MLBpipeline.com. He's an MLB draft and prospect expert, and he was a big part of Heading Home, The Tale of Team Israel, a documentary about Team Israel at the World Baseball Classic. Gabe, we both watched the documentary.
Absolutely. Just for our listeners, in the 2017 World Baseball Classic, a team made up of Jewish American baseball players playing under the flag of Israel, as international sports operates under the rule if you have a grandparent who is a citizen of a country and therefore can become a citizen of that country, you can sort of rush your citizenship to play for that country. You don't actually need to go through the process. You can just play for them. So a number of American Jews who, by the right of return, are given Israeli citizenship, came together, played on that team. They made it a lot farther than expectations were. It was an extremely, extremely fun run. And it's chronicled in this documentary, Heading Home, of which Jonathan Mayo, our guest today, is a very big part.
Yeah, and really thank you to Jonathan for joining us and sharing with us a little bit about what it was like putting that team together and just talking about what it means to be a Jew in sport and a Jew in baseball. It's
a fascinating interview, and we can't wait for you guys to hear it. But first, I got a story for you, Jamie.
Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, my cousin and her fiance were in Israel, sort of on a pre-wedding trip, spending time in Israel, and they're doing the whole tour thing, and they're at the Kotel. And my future cousin-in-law, something catches his eye. Something very, very large who didn't want to pose for any pictures. It was Amare Stoudemire praying at the Kotel.
Wow.
He was just doing his thing, wearing the whole tefillin, the kippah, davening, having a moment.
So I don't know if we have any non-Jewish listeners, but if we do, the Kotel is the Wailing Wall or the Western Wall, considered the holiest site in Judaism. I don't know if we have any non-sports fans who are listeners, but Amare Stoudemire is a former power forward for the Phoenix Suns and the New York Knicks, who, when he became a member of the New York Knicks, embraced his alleged Jewish heritage.
He discovered a Jewish heritage, and he's all in, baby.
He's all in. So I don't know what he's been up to. I think he's
playing in Israel now.
He's playing in Israel, and great to see that he's embracing his Judaism.
Absolutely.
Did your cousin-in-law say hi?
He did. He asked for a picture, and he said, "Not here."
Wow. Well,
so he respects the wall. You got to respect the temple.
Wow, that's great. Well, great to hear Amare is still exploring his Jewish roots. And
absolutely. In his own words, he's a Hebrew.
Yeah, that's right. He's the son of Hebrews, and I guess he's embracing it even more.
On the topic of basketball, Jamie, I think we have a special edition of Jew or Not Jew today. Do you want to take us through it?
Yeah, that's right. So as we're speaking, we currently have 8 teams left in the NBA playoffs. There's 4 in the Eastern Conference and 4 in the Western Conference. Those series are both 2-1 or 2-2 right now.
Do any of them have Jewish players?
They do not.
Okay.
We have not actually discussed this before, but there is one quasi-Jewish player in the NBA, which is Willie Cauley-Stein. And I didn't know this until recently, but he changed his name from Cauley to include Stein, which is his mother's maiden name, to embrace his Jewish grandparents.
Wow.
So he's half Jewish. Haven't really seen him talk a lot about it, but member of the Sacramento Kings, team that's coming up. So not in the NBA playoffs right now. But I'll tell you who is in the NBA playoffs, some Jewish NBA owners.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to tell you the team, and I'm going to tell you the name of the owner.
Yep.
And you're going to tell me whether you think they're Jewish or not.
Before this starts, I'm going to guess we're about to go 8 for 8. But let's see.
I'm going to tell you right now that you're not right.
Okay.
So you're going to have to pick some non-Jews here.
Okay.
All right. So starting from the top in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics. Their owner is Wyc Grousbeck.
Wyc? How do you spell that?
It's W-Y-C, and I looked this up. It's short for Wyclef. I know.
Is that Dutch?
I think it's either Dutch or English.
Wyclef.
John Wycliffe or Wycliffe, I think, was a British philosopher.
Right. Wow. Well, it doesn't matter if he's Jewish or not. It's a Wyclef reference for anyone who got that one. I'm going to guess Wyclef is not Jewish.
That's right. Not a
Okay.
Jew. Okay, 1 for 1. All right, on to the...
Are there any Jewish Wyclefs, do you think?
I don't think
Jewish Wyclevs?
I can't imagine there are. So on to the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets owner, officially the owner, is Ann Walton Kroenke.
Kroenke's Jewish. Stan and company. Because Stan Kroenke owns a bunch of LA sports teams.
Stan Kroenke is the owner of the LA Rams. Ann Walton Kroenke is his wife and is also a
Walton member.
She's a Walton. She's the daughter of Sam Walton. Ann Walton Kroenke is not a Jew.
No.
And Stan Kroenke is often misidentified as a Jew. But
Is he a Mike Jacobs All-Star?
He's a Mike Jacobs All-Star.
Or is he just the victim of a lot of anti-Semitism?
Yeah, just because you move your football team from St. Louis to L.A. for,
And you're a rich guy. People assume you're Jewish.
But he's not a Jew, so she is not a Jew either.
Wow.
The Walton's not Jewish, Arkansas family.
So I'm 1 for 2.
You're 1 for 2. Okay, this is going to be an easy one for you. I think the Golden State Warriors, Joe Lacob is the owner.
I would assume he is Jewish.
He is Jewish.
Right.
And now the Houston Rockets, their opponent in the Western Conference semifinals, their owner, and I didn't know this is not an owner whose name I was familiar with. I never thought of who owned the Houston Rockets.
Right.
His name is Tillman Fertitta.
He's a professional gambler, isn't he?
I don't believe so. I think his money's in tech.
In
tech? I'm not certain. Well, Tillman Fertitta, is he a Jew or not a Jew?
I'm going to guess he's not Jewish.
He's not Jewish.
Not a lot of Jews named Tillman either.
No, I don't think so. So 3 for 4 right now.
Yeah.
The Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
This is 2 people who
Yeah.
are both listed as co-owners, and I couldn't figure out who is the majority owner. But their names are Mark Lazary and Wes Edens.
I know about Wes Edens. I don't think he's Jewish. Their family looks pretty blonde.
That's right.
And as for Lazary, yeah, let's say it.
That's right. Moroccan Jew, Mark Lazary.
Wow, Moroccan.
Lazry.
What do you think the Sephardic community is like in Milwaukee?
I think it's just him.
Do you think Giannis would, have feta and rice with them?
I'm sure there's some overlap there.
Some
maybe.
fattoush salad?
Sure. Greek and Moroccan Mediterranean diet's not that different.
Exactly.
Okay, now this one's a little complicated. The Philadelphia 76ers are owned by a bunch of people.
Yeah, consortium.
Exactly, a consortium. So I'm going to give you the name of the first person who comes up as sort of the owner. And I think this one's a gimme. His name is Joshua Harris.
Okay.
Is he a Jew or not a Jew?
I guess, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, he is a Jew. Also Jews are co-owners Adam Aron, David Blitzer, Martin Geller, David Heller, Mark Leader, and Michael Rubin.
Okay.
And Art Rubel.
Art Rubel.
But not co-owners Travis Hennings, James Lassiter, Handy Sotejo, Eric Thohier, Kevin Hart, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Will Smith.
They all own a chunk of the 76ers?
They all own a chunk of the 76ers. Some of those are not Jews. I apologize for the pronunciation of all that. Please, internet Philadelphia people, do not come at me the way you come at everybody else.
So, if Josh Harris is Jewish, is Tobias Harris Jewish, the Philadelphia 76er player?
I think Joshua is a little more Jewish than Tobias. I don't know if there's any Jewish Tobiases anymore. I guess Toby from the West Wing is the last one.
Right.
Yeah.
Is Tobias Funke Jewish? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Okay, so the Portland Trailblazers facing the Nuggets in the Western Conference semifinal. They are owned by unfortunately, the estate of Paul Allen.
Yeah, he's not Jewish.
He's not Jewish. That's correct. And that leaves us only with our hometown Toronto Raptors.
Yep.
Of course, the majority of the team is owned by Rogers Communication and Bell Telephone, neither of which are Jewish organizations as far as I'm concerned.
I don't think at any level, anywhere in the company.
That's right. But 25% of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is owned by Kilmer Sports, a.k.a. Larry Tenenbaum.
Yep. I believe he was Jewish. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, the Leafs and the Raptors played on the same night as the Jews on the night of the first Seder in Passover. Both Leafs and the Raptors had playoff games, and from what I am told, Larry Tenenbaum was quite nebroigus over it.
Yeah, well, I can understand his frustration, but as we've seen from this Jew or not a Jew NBA Owners Edition, I mean, we didn't even go all 16 teams, and there's definitely a few that were eliminated in the first round that have Jewish owners. The Clippers, for sure, off the top of my head.
Ballmer Jewish?
Yeah, Ballmer's Jewish.
Really?
Half Jewish, at least.
I mean, I've seen him dance in that video. It looked pretty Jewish to me, but I don't know.
So I guess Larry has an understandable argument, and nobody likes to see their team play when you've got other plans, but it's not as though there was some team that had no Jewish owners or fans that was going to be spared that fate.
That's true. And I certainly know Jewish people who went to the Raptors game
right
that night.
So, pretty decent shot for, if not a Jewish finals MVP, then at least a Jewish owner's name engraved on the Larry O'Brien trophy. Is that something they do?
I don't think they engrave it, but you
do.
could have a Jewish owner hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy.
Yeah, he could be handed it from fellow Jew Adam Silver.
That's right. Yeah, Jew or not Jew, Adam Silver. I think we know that one.
I think we know that one. Well, that was a good round of Jew or not a Jew.
Yeah,
I think maybe we'll come back with the NHL playoffs in a couple of weeks and see if there's any Jews left there.
I don't know about that. I think they're all gone.
There's
that guy who plays on there's Jaden Schwartz, who was in Mike Jacobs All-Star.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who is not Jewish but plays for the St. Louis Blues, who as of this recording have not yet been eliminated.
Right. And who has a Jewish sounding name. Might be mistaken for a Jew, but not a Jew himself.
Not quite.
Well,
should we get on with our interview? Should we bring our groups? We were not quite popular enough to get John Hamm, and we are a Jewish podcast, so we had to settle for John Mayo.
That was great.
Just kidding, John. We love you.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our interview with Jonathan Mayo.
We'd love to talk to you about heading home and Jews in baseball and a bunch of stuff you've worked on, we've been following. So I think the best place to start is with the documentary. We've both seen it, and we're sort of curious, how did you get involved with Team Israel? And how did you get involved with the documentary, and what was your role in that?
Sure. And it's been such a labor of love, so I'm happy to talk about that. It really started with an idea that I had of taking a group of Jewish players, American Jewish players, to Israel. And that kind of came out of conversations that I had, in my time as a baseball writer, talking to Jewish players, mostly in the big leagues, about their willingness to embrace being known as Jewish ball players, even if they didn't have much else in the way of Jewish identity. And I always found that fascinating and thought, it can be interesting to have them dive into that and explore what it means to be Jewish by taking them to Israel, because where else, there's no better place to try to examine that.
Of course.
The filmmakers, the Ironbound Films, they did all the heavy lifting in the movie. I was just the idea guy. Two of the three partners, Jeremy Newberger and Daniel Miller, and I went to sleepaway camp together, some 30 whatever years ago.
The film is a great, truly Jewish origin.
Yeah, absolutely. We grew up in Young Judea together, and in fact, Daniel Miller succeeded me on our regional board in New Jersey, Young Judea. So, there's all these ties. And Seth Kramer is the third partner, and he did not grow up in Young Judea, but did grow up in a Jewish youth movement, so it all fit together. But Jeremy and I, for a number of years, when we reconnected, I've been trying to come up with a project to work on together, and this was the idea that we were going to try to do, except that no one wanted to pay for it. We just couldn't get anywhere with it.
Sure.
Then Team Israel qualified for the World Baseball Classic in Brooklyn, and suddenly people were interested again, and it was kind of crazy. We went from what was that, in September that they qualified. I think I got a call in early October, and in January we were in Israel.
Wow.
Taking the tour that you see for the first part of the film. And then after that, we're like, well, now we got to go to Korea and see what happens. And we did a Kickstarter for that, and to help raise the funds to be able to do that. And I think all of us thought that maybe the sort of ultimate, that climactic scene would be the first pitch in Korea. They made it,
right?
And they started winning games, and it made it a much longer movie. Rather than maybe a short film, it ended up being a full-length feature, and obviously turned into much more of a baseball movie overall than just about this sort of exploring your identity piece, which is still obviously a large part of the film.
Right. Well, I guess there's a few ways to look at the movie. You can look at it, obviously as a movie about Jews and Jews in sports. But I think it also works great just as a baseball movie. This is a great baseball story, a classic sort of trope of underdogs who sort of are able to achieve something more than they would have thought. Lots of lovable characters on the team, I thought, and that was presented great in the documentary. I think in some baseball movies, you don't necessarily see the end. It's sort of like in Major League when the end of the movie is them winning the pennant, and you never find out if they win the World Series. But here you see the ups and the downs. As you mentioned, Israel had a great run at the World Baseball Classic. Ultimately didn't bring home the big prize, but you do get to see the whole arc of it, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I mean, the fact they made it to the second round was enough, They, as pointed out in the film, I'm not giving this away, but they were at 200 to 1. I think were the odds for Team Israel to win the World Baseball Classic. They were the biggest long shot. So for them to sweep through the first round and then win the first game of the second round, that way, I remember when we got to Japan, I had a feeling they were going to be competitive. The fact that they were being thought of as a sort of laughingstock, well, I realized wasn't fair. I didn't know the quality of the teams they were going to be facing other than the Netherlands. I didn't know the Korean players or the Chinese Taipei players. So, that was more challenging. To have an idea. I'm like, all right, these guys, most of them have played in the big leagues at some point. They're going to compete. People think they're going to just get destroyed. I'm like, no, this is not the Jamaican bobsled team. It's not that. And then when they won the first game, when they beat Cuba in the first game in the second round, that was when all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, could they make it to the semifinal back in the States? No, that was, I had a personal, I was really torn up about it because obviously I wanted them to win the whole thing, but I was due in Florida through my normal spring training coverage 2 days after the tournament in Japan ended. So when they won that game, I'm like, how am I going to do this? Because this was not a work thing for me. That I was doing this on my own, and MLB.com was great in terms of giving me the space to do it, but I couldn't shirk responsibilities, especially last minute like that.
Sure.
So I mean, luckily I didn't have to cross that bridge. For me, I mean, it would have been great to have to try to figure it out. Instead, I just went to Florida, ridiculously jet lagged for my Florida spring training coverage. But yeah, I mean that was the one moment where I'm like, my goodness, maybe they could do it. Who knew? Who knows? And then the fairy dust ran out, and they lost the next two games, and that was that. But boy, it was I mean we didn't need to show them winning the pennant, right? Because what they did was so far beyond any expectations that it was a triumph, no matter how it ended.
There was a lot of Daenu in the documentary that, if we just make it to the tournament, if we just win a game, if we just score a run, and it just kept happening and kept happening.
I actually wrote a Daenu column for MLB.com after the end of it.
Right.
That's amazing.
You and I are on the same wavelength.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about players choosing to or not embrace their Jewish identity. There's a moment in the film where Ike Davis says, when you're playing in New York, it wasn't really a choice. And he says he never really thought like he was Jewish, but he wasn't necessarily religious or observant or particularly culturally Jewish until it was sort of foisted upon him by Jewish fans. I mean, as a Jewish fan, I don't feel guilty about that. I think we're looking for anybody that we can sort of see ourselves in. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and that's not unusual. Sean Green, who people give tons of credit for being very sort of thoughtful about his kind of journey in becoming more Jewish, is the first to admit that it really wasn't until fans in Toronto started recognizing him, and then around Major League Baseball as being Jewish. And somebody didn't run from it, but that's what made him sort of start looking into it more and taking it more. I don't want to say more seriously, because it's you do with your faith what you choose, in my opinion. So he chose to explore it more deeply. I think Ike Davis probably, without speaking for him, would have been happy if no one had ever figured out that he was Jewish. He would have gone on, and it would have been fine. He wasn't going to go out of his way to label himself as a Jewish baseball player. But when it was recognized and it started coming up, especially in New York, yeah, you don't have a choice, but he could have very easily said, yes, my mother's Jewish. I don't really have much Jewish identity. And that likely would have been the end of it. But I give a lot of these guys credit. Ike Davis is not a deeply theological man. It's not what he's not paid to think about these sorts of things. He didn't study it. None of those things. He didn't grow up with a whole lot of it. So the very fact that he sort of said, okay, yes, I didn't have a choice, we can't run from it, but might as well embrace it. It's not an either or. You could not run from it, but you could also kind of ignore it for the most part, and then people would stop talking about it. But he didn't do that. He didn't start sitting out on high holidays like Sean Green did and things of that nature. But everyone has their own path, and for me, actually, Ike is the one who kind of journeyed the farthest over the course of the experience of this movie, where he was, to me, the one who was kind of the most nervous about going to Israel. He talks about it in the film a little bit, just nervous about being, so publicly Jewish, so loudly Jewish,
right?
And kind of by the end realizing it was kind of a cool deal,
right?
So that was his baseball mikvah moment, for lack of a better phrase.
I think there's also sort of a reticence in professional sports to do anything that would make you stand out. We've talked on this podcast before about athletes who stick with the company line, say the quiet things, and just go about their business. And the athletes who are visibly Jewish tend not to do that.
And in the documentary, some of the players talk about times where they were in the minor leagues in small towns where they encountered situations where they heard something anti-Semitic or something was yelled at them. So do you get the feeling that most Jewish ball players are keeping it to themselves for the most part?
Maybe less so now because of the success of the team. I mean, winning does bridge a lot of gaps and maybe make them a little more willing. Listen, they were playing on national and international TV with Israel across their jerseys, so they were trumpeting it, and they came back, and everyone was talking about how awesome it was. So, there was a lot of gain from that. Beyond the wins and how it helped move Israel baseball forward and all those things, but in terms of their own thing, for most of these guys, when they're in any professional clubhouse wherever they've played, they're often it. They're the one, the Jewish player on the team.
Right.
Maybe there's two, but not so often. There's a tendency to not bring that up. And, like America, in a lot of ways, like the United States, in a lot of ways, baseball is very Christian. They have chapel every Sunday. No one's ever saying, "Hey, come daven shacharit before our game." That there isn't that for Jews. And listen, they're a considerable minority. I get it. So I think there is that survival of the fittest mentality where, like, you want to fit in, you're going to be part of a team, and if you're surrounded by people, some of whom may have never met a Jew before, then you're going to probably keep a little bit more to yourself. And then the fact that most of the guys were not guys who had necessarily had really strong Jewish upbringing, so it wasn't something that was as you see in the film. The certain players who had a stronger upbringing displayed it and talked about it in a much more overt way.
So, looking forward to the future, do you have any idea if there's going to be a 2021 World Baseball Classic? I know nothing's been announced yet, but are you feeling optimistic about the prospects for another go for Team Israel?
I wish I had some sort of inside information because I do work for Major League Baseball's website, but I don't. One of the things that I wondered about is when baseball was brought back to the Olympics for 2020, I wondered if that would make the World Baseball Classic obsolete because the whole event was started largely because baseball had been removed from the Olympics. I think there's room for both. You have the World Cup for soccer and you have Olympic soccer, and it's not, I don't hear anybody in, the international sort of football community saying there's not time for both. That seems somewhat ridiculous to me. So I'm hoping that it continues. I love the event. I think it's taken a little while to gain some footing here in the United States, but and some of that had to do with the American players not loving it. But I think this last one, when they won, and you saw players who had buy-in, players from international communities, they're all about international competition. They play in the Caribbean series, or players from Asia. They love competing internationally against each other. So I was lucky enough to cover a World Baseball Classic in Puerto Rico, and it felt like the Caribbean series, which I also was lucky enough to cover once. So, I hope the event continues, and not just because I want to see what Team Israel does for an encore. They do qualify automatically. They don't have to qualify again because they won a game.
I'm sure you get this question all the time, but if they were to have another classic, would there be more buy-in from some more established Jewish major leaguers? Your Ryans Braun and so forth.
I hope so. I really hope so. I think two things will happen, and one is aspirational. And the aspirational is that you'll get some of those established players willing to play. What makes that difficult is if they, and that's likely what happened again, have to go, 3/4 of the way around the world to do it. Mm-hmm. They had trouble getting, American stars to play for the United States, and they were playing, in Florida.
It wasn't quite as onerous on us spectators, but I remember waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning to watch Team Israel play when they were in Korea and Japan. Wasn't exactly the easiest thing to do.
No, of course not. Now, if they were smart, they would, round one for Team Israel would be like in Miami. There are some players who had expressed interest, and it just didn't work. Like Kevin Pillar really wanted to play, and we had the sort of first iteration of the trip to Israel, where we couldn't find the funding. He was coming.
Oh, wow.
And then and I think my dog is very excited about Kevin Pillar.
Aren't we all?
So he was going to come, and I think had he come and had that experience, then he would have been more likely to play on the team. He had the thumb injury, and he was just like, I think he really wanted to play, but he's like, I can't get out of my routine in rehabbing to get ready for the season by going and doing this. And that was understandable. The other one that was really disappointing was Alex Bregman, who, before the qualifier in Brooklyn, he played in the Futures game. And I was talking to him, and he was all in. He could not wait, and he said, I'm playing in that qualifier. The only thing that will keep me from playing in that qualifier is if I get called up to the big leagues. 2 weeks later, he got called up to the big leagues. And so I think that, and then fast forward to the actual team in the tournament, he was getting ready for his first opening day roster. He'd gotten dinged up at the end of that year. I don't think the Astros were thrilled about the idea of him going, so he didn't. Sure. He was like, I can't. Now, I think there's a possibility that he'd want to do it. He loves the idea of it. The only thing, is if he's starting for Team USA at that point, which could happen. I mean, so those are the two stars. I mean, Ryan Braun by 2021 is going to be, close to the end of his career, I would imagine. He had not honestly expressed any interest in playing, so I don't know if that's something he'd want to do.
Well, speaking of that issue, you're mostly a prospects writer, focusing on the young guys coming up in the game. Are there any Jewish names that you see coming up in the amateur or minor league prospect ranks that you're keeping an eye out for?
I don't know any in the amateur ranks. Unless my son, who's a senior in high school, is good enough to play in 2021, but I don't see that happening. But hey, you never know. There are a couple of guys. I mean, Max Fried is a guy, establishing himself in the big leagues. I think he's very interested. He was still sort of feeling his way back from after missing 2 years at Tommy John surgery and some setbacks. I think he probably would really want to play. As of right now, that's on paper. The other thing I was going to say, that I think will really happen is it's going to be a lot easier, I think, for Israel baseball to find the Jewish players because they even in the immediate aftermath of the World Baseball Classic, and I'll take a small bit of credit as the film started to come out, they started hearing about players who were Jewish because they said, wait, I could play for an Israel national team? There was a great story recently, and I can't remember the guy's name, but, was a college player. And because he saw heading home, he and somebody was at the movie to do a Q&A, they were put in touch with Peter Kurz, the head of Israel baseball, and he's going to be on the Olympic qualifying team.
Wow.
I think there's going to be more of those guys that are, even if they're not great players, but guys who are in the minor leagues, the Scotty Burchams of the world, who will come forward on their own now. So I think that's going to be probably more of the benefit than the sort of more established players.
Rising tide bringing all boats.
Yes. I mean, I would hope that some of the boats have some of those established guys, and you never know. I mean, there are others. Rowdy Tellez could play on Team Israel.
Definitely.
The beefy boy chick.
He could play on 3 different teams, which I find fascinating. But
on Mexico, the U.S., and Israel.
Yeah. So I mean, those are the players. I don't know. There are guys in the minor leagues. You sort of have to wait and see where they're at.
Well, Jonathan, I wanted to mention as well, we really enjoyed your piece that you wrote in the wake of the Tree of Life shooting. You're from Pittsburgh, I understand. My dad's also actually a Pittsburgh Jew. He's lived in Toronto for the last 30 odd years, but he grew up in Shadyside as well. Can you talk a little bit about what that meant for you, or what it meant to the Pittsburgh Jewish community?
It's kind of hard to put into words, but yeah, I live around the corner from Tree of Life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a member of any of the specific congregations impacted, but we have close friends who are, and from a direct contact standpoint, we were fortunate that none of them were in the building on that morning, but they spent the next week going to funerals, and this community is very strong in a lot of ways. And it's been a little bit more than 6 months now. The shooting in San Diego, obviously it was horrible and triggering for many of us. And it's one of those things that unless you've personally experienced an event like this, it's hard to really fully understand. And unfortunately, they're happening so frequently that more and more people are directly impacted by it. So it's the worst example of misery loves company that I could ever think of. I think we're starting to move forward as best as we can. I think there's a lot of healing that still needs to be done. I was very amazed by the surrounding communities who stepped up, came in support. Specifically, raising money for the congregations. I don't want to get too overtly political on your podcast.
Be my guest.
Well, okay. There was a very large march here on the day that a certain world leader decided to come visit when everyone told them not to. And the people who came from all the communities, and I was one of the organizers of that march, who came to stand shoulder to shoulder with us was amazing. And what I'm working for and hoping to see more of, and we're seeing some of it, is that now the Jewish community, obviously we're not done grieving, and we may never be done fully healing from this, will start returning the favor to marginalized communities in this city. Pittsburgh is a wonderful place. It is, like a lot of cities, segregated in many ways, and there's oftentimes people don't reach across communities. They sort of only are looking within their own four walls. And if this taught us anything, we cannot do that. There's too much at stake. There are powers of evil who are trying to and working to keep us apart, when really we need to be standing together with those communities to help everyone move forward.
It's interesting. I've actually been to a Pittsburgh Pirates Jewish Heritage Night, and it was a blast. They were selling. People were buying the Pirates hats with the Magen David on it, and
nice.
the Temple Sinai saying the anthems, and it seemed like it was the most normal thing, just another game. And to me, that's awesome.
No, it's fantastic. It's very cool to see, and there are a lot of teams that have Jewish Heritage Nights now. So it's a great way to sort of reach out to the Jewish community. Listen, speaking of that sort of thing, you're talking about like the Pirates hats in Hebrew and things like that. The Team Israel hat was like a hot commodity.
Oh yeah.
This is a blue hat with a Jewish star on it. I mean, that's amazing that people like, and you can't find it because they didn't make enough of them, and so it will continue to be a kind of a collector's item for that reason. But that's like another byproduct of this whole thing, and how exciting it was. But it sort of falls into that same bucket in terms of the success of Jewish Heritage Nights in a number of markets.
Absolutely. We've spoken on this podcast before about the Mike Jacobs Jewish Heritage fiasco in Miami a few years ago.
They gave out T-shirts with his face on it on Jewish Heritage Night, not knowing that Mike Jacobs is actually not Jewish.
Yeah, it generally helps to ask.
We're also not entirely sure how Robbie Grossman isn't Jewish.
He's sort of a Mike Jacobs all-star.
Right. Well, like I got to think that there's somewhere, in Robbie Grossman's family, maybe it's just a paternal grandfather, somewhere somebody's Jewish in all likelihood. But, I'm on the mind of, if you don't consider yourself Jewish, then that's totally fine. I've had really interesting conversations. I remember talking to Jason Kipnis, who does not identify as being Jewish, but does have a Jewish parent. And I had a conversation, I think it was before he even made it up to the big leagues, or maybe he was just making it to the big leagues. And he asked me, how do I handle it? He wanted to handle it in a respectful way. The last thing you want to do is like, oh, you have a Jewish father? Yes, sir. You just, no, I'm not Jewish. Like,
of course.
So I said, listen, I think if you're just honest and say, yes, my father is Jewish, but I was not raised Jewish in any way. I have the utmost respect for people who are Jewish or who practice whatever faith, but that's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of the discussion. I remember years and years ago when David Cohn was pitching for First Met, there were these rumors going around that he had changed his last name from Cohen to Cohn. Right. And now David Cohn, who's now a broadcaster and a really good one, was maybe the most media savvy player I've seen ever. I mean, he was remarkable. He said that this was not, he didn't have anyone coach him, but he said, in no way did I change my name. If my name had been Cohen and I was Jewish, I would be celebrating that. I would not hide that from people. I'm like, my goodness, that was like the greatest honorary Jew answer ever. So there are ways you can answer that. If you don't consider yourself Jewish, that's fine. And that's what I told Jason Kipnis, and I think that's largely what he's told people, that that's who he is. Now, if he's still playing 2021 and he wants to play for Team Israel,
we're always willing to take him. Well, Jonathan, I think we have to wrap up there, but thank you so much for joining us. We'll be sure to post links to the Heading Home, the Team Israel documentary, Heading Home: The Tale of Team Israel, the documentary about the Israel at the World Baseball Classic. People can read your writing on MLB.com. And thank you again for being here with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Great talking with you guys.
Well, thank you to Jonathan Mayo for that scintillating discussion.
And thanks to all of you for joining us again. Please like and subscribe our podcast wherever you get your podcast feed. We're trying to do this on a bi-weekly schedule. Please also subscribe to the Canadian Jewish Schmooze, our brother podcast. I feel like we're the little brother, right?
Probably. They're our mishpucha, one way or the other.
Please subscribe also or take a listen to the Canadian Jewish Schmooze, also on the CJN Podcast Network.
It's hosted by our producer, Alex, as well as the supervising producer of the CJN Podcast Network, Michael Freeman.
And please like and subscribe that one as well. This podcast is brought to you again by the Canadian Jewish News, and we thank them for their continued support.
CJN Podcast Network.
And we'll see you again whenever there's more sports news with Jews.